All right, and now we're live. So, like I was saying, or before, like what I was saying or whatever, yeah. So I got the topic for tonight, or at least we could start off tonight's topic, or maybe we might have many topics. I don't know, but Wayne, my buddy Wayne here. Wayne, you can say hi so the audience knows I'm not skitzing.
Hello, everybody.
There you go. See, I told you guys Wayne was real. I will always be like, there goes my friend Wayne, and people are like, who? So yeah, that just proves that like I'm not crazy. Um, but Wayne had a good question a couple of weeks ago, and we never got a chance to touch on this. But Wayne had asked, he said we should hang out on what was God doing before He created the earth. And so, like I was saying, there's about like maybe like three or four different Christian views on what God was doing before He created the earth or the planet, and one of those is of course, the very famous view of younger creationism, which is just, well, in my point of view, I just think it just can't be true at all. Then you have the gap theory, or like the old Earth creationist view, where like in between God creating the universe or creating the Earth, they believe there was like some type of war in heaven. Another view is the view of the people who say, "I don't know." The people are just they'll say, I don't know what God was doing. And then you had the people like me, the evolutionary creationists or theistic evolutionists, who will say before God was creating the earth, He was creating the other planets that predated the planet and stuff. So I guess I'm gonna open up the floor and just mute my mic because I've been talking for too long. Anybody? Anybody at all? You guys can speak. Did I crash or something? Hello.
I guess I can go.
There you go.
I honestly don't think a question like that would even be answerable. Because how would you know what he was doing? All the Bible really says in that is what happened after the universe was already created and stuff. And during its creation, that's all you got. So anybody to have a
Oh, you
view
talking about
point.
Genesis?
Yeah.
Yeah, like because I know Genesis 1 says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, but like you said, by the time you get to Genesis 1, like the earth is here, the universe is here, stuff like that, and then
Yeah.
Genesis 2 it just says in the I think it says and the spirit of God was hovered over the face of the water. Maybe that's like Genesis 3 or something like that.
Right.
But
So anybody saying anything else, it's like that's just speculation at that point. And I mean, it's an interesting thing to speculate about, but I mean, you're not getting any real definite answers. So
yeah, I would say although the Bible doesn't give an answer on that, and as a matter of fact, I don't think the people who wrote the Bible, because we can think about it scientifically, like what scientifically, like what physically was God doing before He created the Earth? Was God making other planets, or was He making different stars, or whatever? But then you can think about it spiritually, like what was God doing in heaven? Was there a war in heaven? Did a war break out? Was Satan and God going through their feud or something? So I guess
are we just one of many universes?
Well, hold on. I don't think, well, biblically, didn't Genesis like 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth all at kind of like one time?
It can be argued differently.
It doesn't really speak like we are the beginning. It almost sounds like,
or at least that's where the story starts off at. But what I would say is I wouldn't necessarily look at the Bible for that answer. I would look out in the telescope and I would literally look at creation itself, because like when we look out at stars and look out at different planets and everything, we're looking into the past, so we can see what God was doing billions of years ago. So, and from the looks of it, it looks like God was just busy creating other distant galaxies and etc. So it's not really a deep question to me, but it could be a deep question to somebody else. But my answer would be, you can see it. You can look into a telescope and you can see it.
But Wayne, like you seem like you're someone who's extremely scientifically literate. So I would say I would suspect that you understand the theories the theories of, let's say, inflation, and there being matter, and matter has a gravitational effect where it starts clumping and you get stars because of the pressure, and all these things that we can explain. And you're concluding that
Mhm.
God created, let's say, other planets, but do you not accept the natural explanation of, let's say, star formation and the current theories of universal expansion and things of that nature? Because it seems like you've made this conclusion, but I would say, like, if I was talking to a physicist, or someone who was really into astronomy, they would be able to posit that yes, other planets and other stars kind of developed through a naturalistic process.
Well, yeah, by accepting those naturalistic processes, you don't then negate God's existence. I would just say that those processes were the processes that God used for creation, and that's it. I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
No, I wasn't asking for the negation. It just seems just to be an added layer, because if I have everything, it works. But if I have everything and then I add this extra explanation on it, it also works. So it just seems to violate that principle of the simplest generally the better. You've added this being on
Mm,
top of a model.
I think there are two different type of explanations. So one is a scientific explanation, and the other is a theological explanation. So if I ask you, why did you get up and get tea? The reason why I was able to get tea was because I turned the stove on, and because of the laws of combustion and blah blah blah, through this long process, I was able to make tea. And another answer that is equally as valid is you got tea because you were thirsty. So they're both two answers. They're two valid answers, but two different types of answers to the question you're looking for. I don't know if that helps out or not. Oh, and MP isn't here twice. But Wayne, since this was actually a topic. Oh, and Manny, you're breaking up. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, my computer froze, so my other avatar's still here. I'm just trying to kick it
Oh,
out.
yeah, that's what I'm like. All right, I didn't know what happened. Christian, man, if you don't get in here, man, you should have asked me for the link.
What?
Somebody invite Christian, man, if you can. Why is he out there? He should be in here. Wayne, are you still there, or did you go to sleep? Because Wayne will be like, we should have a hangout, and then I'll be like, all right, we should have a hangout, and then I open up a hangout, and then Wayne is like, all right, I'm going, guys.
Well, I thought Wayne was like your
True.
make believe friend after you like introduced him and he said nothing. I was like, oh, this must be just like your running guy.
That's because I'm a very busy guy. I told Wayne most of the time that he has a hangout is always when I'm doing something. It's always when I'm at work. I'll be at work at night, so sometimes when he had a hangouts, I'll be at work and I'm not able to. I have to multitask, so I'm not able to always listen and
Yeah,
say
Wayne, what are you
anything.
doing?
So sometimes you gotta understand that I got a busy schedule. Sometimes on all the time. If I get on, then I'm able just to only listen.
Wayne has
And
10
Is
kids.
this the other Wayne Fillmore or is this the original Wayne? They say I'm identical.
yeah, I guess you could say I'm Wayne Fillmore number 2.
Yeah. Yes. So Wayne number 2 is really busy.
I need both you guys to count backwards to make sure you guys are not the same person.
They aren't the same person. Trust me, I can hear the difference.
Yeah, is it because we're both black? All black men sound the same? Huh? That's what you trying to say? Are you trying to oppress us?
Yes, I'm saying that. Yes, I am saying that. If that makes you feel better. Now count down from 10.
9, 8. Wayne, you're not counting. Oh my gosh, we can't count at the same time.
Yeah, because you're counting.
Can't do it.
Yes.
But Wayne, what? Well, this is your topic you wanted to talk about. So I don't know. What's your view on that view?
I mean,
What was God doing before He created the
I
heavens?
think who was that? Let me see. Was it Thaddeus? I think Thaddeus said that. I agree with Thaddeus. You really can't really prove that. Like what was done before. I don't think you can really prove that. We don't have no way, no possible way to prove that. So, but it's just good that I wanted to hear the opinions on other people's opinions, how they feel about that.
Okay. Cause I just want to ask him, why are we discussing the topic?
Right, because
something that I didn't know.
Like Wayne said, there's reasons to believe or something. So, you want to hear other people's reasons of what they think or what they believe. So it was just something that that came across my mind that I just wanted to ask and thought that I should discuss about. But
this is like asking the whole, can God lift a rock that's like bigger than himself or something, whatever. Like you can't answer that.
What Wayne? That's not what I wanted to have a Google hangout on about. That was
well, yeah, that was a couple weeks ago. But I figured we talk about today. Another good topic was of course this topic is always like being drawn on afresh. Like somebody's always talking about this like every week. Evolution. I was looking at some YouTube videos, maybe like earlier throughout the week, and the Vigilant Christian was getting grilled on evolution and blah blah blah. Is it time now? Well, I guess this is more of a rhetorical question because we all know the answer. Is it time now for like Christians to just accept evolution and move on? And one question that isn't rhetorical is this: I feel as if a lot of atheists use evolutionary theory or the fact that they understand it better than some religious people, so they can intellectually look down on them.
Hold on, can you say that again?
I feel as if atheists use their understanding of evolutionary theory as a way to downplay religious people, as a tactic to more or less say that religious people are stupid because they don't understand evolution, which isn't necessarily the case. Like I said, you could not understand a scientific theory but still be bright in some areas. Like Thaddeus isn't the brightest mind when it comes to science, but he's very artistic. Wayne, who is that over there cussing up a storm?
Yeah, that's why I put my phone on mute. That's exactly why.
All I heard was somebody need to hop out my DMs. Who is he DMing? He's like 12.
That is my nephew. That's who that is.
At 12, we didn't have cell phones at my age. We had books and encyclopedias and stuff.
back in my day, even though we're only in our 20s.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I guess, are we allowed to have old man syndrome at this age? I don't think so.
In this day and age, a computer is old by the time it hits like 2 years old.
Yeah. What's the name of that law where the processing speed has to double every 18 months? It's like the law.
I think it's called Hooke's Law. I'm not sure though.
As far as the answer to the evolution thing, though, yes, I think it's about time that Christians just accept evolution. It just makes things so much easier.
Yeah, but
it shouldn't be a logical issue, and I understand why it is, but it really shouldn't be. There's people like Wayne that can accept it, no problem. Before I quit calling myself a Christian, I could accept evolution, no problem, after I understood that there was a way you can look at both of them and have it both make sense. So, in reality, like this should be a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest though. Even when I was a Christian, automatically saw if evolution was true, Christianity had issues. Like I was able to see that, and I think most Christians recognize that fact. I think some have overcome it, in meaningful ways. But I think generally, when you speak to Christians about Christianity and evolution, most of them take the proposition that they both can't be true at the same time.
No, it's because they read the Bible like an instructions manual, like it was written in English originally. That's why.
Yeah, I blame it on the intelligent design movement. What was the guy's name? The leader of that, he calls it the wedge strategy, where they made evolutionary theory seem entirely atheistic. So it's not really a problem at all. It's only a problem to the people who make it a problem.
A lot of the people that like back in the day that used to actually, be considered a fundamentalist, like of old, like they didn't have a problem with evolution.
I got a quote from Billy Graham, and Billy Graham is like, whether God used evolution or not, it really doesn't matter because the Bible's all about Jesus. There you go.
Well, hold on. I don't know where you guys get this. Don't forget, there was I don't know if you guys are into law, but the Scopes monkey trial, where he taught evolution in the classroom and was prosecuted because it was illegal to teach it in classrooms. Like for the time when the theory was posited, I think there's always been a tension with the religious, just about, well, if this is true, this naturalistic explanation, it does bring some doubt to the whole foundations of what we believe. And even till I think today, even though people now can teach evolution in schools, and I think it's the prevailing science, but still this tension still lies, because if you're talking about evolution being true in the aspect of how we understand it, then it does bring some it does lead to the fact that maybe the biblical accounts aren't also true at the same time, because it would almost be impossible for that to happen, for Noah's Ark to have happened, for all these things that have happened and be true. Evolution couldn't be true.
But actually, that's a problem that came about a little after Darwin had discovered the theory. As a matter of fact, I think his name. Hold on, I had a quote on my phone. Charles, is it Kingsley? Hold on, give me 1 second, because this was the guy. This was the guy who responded to Darwin discovering evolution. Oh, here you go, right here. His name was Charles Kingsley, and Charles Kingsley, his response was, "We knew of old that God was so wise that He could make all things, but behold, God is so much more wiser than even that. He's so wise that He can make all things make themselves." And so Charles Kingsley, he's like, "Oh my gosh, Charles Darwin, he basically he's broken the code." And so that was, and he was more or less like a fundamentalist evangelical, Charles Kingsley. But what you do see is a couple years like later, maybe like in the early, like I say like I'm sorry, late 1800s, with Ellen G. White. She actually was a big proponent in like the anti-evolution movement. Like the Seventh-day Adventists and stuff like that. They came up with creation science. Kent Hovind's thing, where Kent Hovind goes around teaching people about creation science. He didn't make that stuff up. Kent Hovind stole it from the Seventh-day Adventists. But it really wasn't a problem. Charles Darwin, like Midnight said on the side, Charles Darwin, before he lost his faith, he was a religious man himself. He wrote a letter to Asa Gray. Asa Gray was one of Charles Darwin's Christian friends. And Asa Gray, he wrote a letter saying to Charles Darwin, "Well, now that we have discovered this process of evolution, what does this mean about God?" And Charles Darwin writes back, "One can be an ardent theist and an evolutionist." This is in his letter to Asa Gray. And so Charles Darwin wasn't against people believing in God and accepting evolution. I think the problem arises where do you take the account in Genesis, like Thaddeus said, as an instruction manual, or maybe we might be looking at it, I don't know, with the wrong set of lens?
Because I think that I could be wrong, but isn't the whole young Earth creation view pretty recent compared to half of these?
Very recent. What?
And if by recent you mean like 50, 60 years, then I guess so. And Ken Hovind kind of really kickstarted that.
Yeah.
he defeated a lot of people and kind of brought this whole thing of like a shitload of information, and whatever stuck to the wall stuck to the wall. Keep in mind, this is before the
I do want to mention too. I don't think evolution was just accepted by the religious, right? I think generally at first when this theory was proposed and people started understanding it, remember, people were prosecuted in the United States for teaching this in classrooms. You know, look up the Scopes monkey trial. That's what it's about. They were trying to teach evolution in classroom and it was illegal. You would go to jail and pay a fine. It was a case that went to Supreme Court. And then even in the 1980s, you had another case where they were trying to teach creationism and evolution because they said the two were incompatible. And that went up to the Supreme Court, in which they said you couldn't teach creationism in classrooms anymore because it was just religion, not science. That ruling is kind of where we're at today, where, you know, I think it's inherent that yes, you can be an avid Christian and you can believe in the theory of evolution, but to say that there is no tension between the two systems, I don't think is being genuine, because you know there just inherently is.
Looking up some research, and apparently Henry Morris is like one of the guys who started like the Institute for Creation Research.
Yes, Henry Morris was the guy he wrote a book with George McCready Price around the 1900s. It's called The Genesis Flood, and that book kickstarted Younger Creationism. So Younger Creationism came first, but then the flood account, like the global flood story, that came later. And when the flood account came, that's when everybody started making these Younger Creation theories along with it. And then a couple years later, like in the 90s, enter Ken Ham.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. What about Bishop Usher? Because he was the first one through the genealogy and came up with the 6,000 number to say, okay, you know, if you just take the genealogy of the Bible and run the numbers back, you get about, you know, X amount of years. You get a 6,000 year time frame. So, and then Younger Creationism holding to the Bishop Usher's interpretation of the lineages. Okay, Bishop Usher said, if you run it back, this is where you get. So this must be true.
That's where Ellen G. White got most of her stuff from Bishop Usher. But the crazy thing about it is so Ellen G. White, her protege was George McCready Price. So what a lot of younger creationists don't know is George McCready Price is the guy who came up with he made the narrative of the global flood very popular. It can be traced back to Ellen G. White when she started having visions. Ellen White would have these visions and dreams where she said God, one, showed her that creation was made in 6 literal 24-hour days, and also it didn't have a name. Her spirit guide had showed her that there was a global flood. And every time we go into the dirt or whatever, we go into the geologic column, though all of those fossils can be explained by the flood. And then after Ellen White, George McCready Price comes, he makes it famous, writes the book with Henry Morris. But the funny thing is, during the Scopes trial, there was one of the lawyers questioning George McCready Price was an order of creationism. Order of creationism came first.
Well, wait, I would say this. If you want to go back, you know, this young earth creationism is not a new phenomenon. This 7-day literalism is not a new phenomenon. I think if you go back to, you know, when the Bible was first written, or even back to the time, you know, 100 years after Jesus, people weren't as astute in astronomy as we are now. They probably thought those were 6 or 7 literal days. The understanding that it may not have been, it was because I think close to the 1900s when we started understanding that the Earth is billions of years old, and you know, and the universe is billions of years old. So I think that understanding of those weren't 6 or 7 literal days is the new phenomenon. That it's not reversed.
Actually,
what I'm looking at right now tends to argue the opposite, actually, because, you know, with the whole Ellen G. White thing, and then going into Henry Morris and all that, these are pretty recent, like 1800s, 1900s stuff. So if that's what started the whole creation movement, then this has to be a fairly new invention. Like we're not talking
about maybe like 100. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're trying to tell me that everybody else before their time believed the same thing, and I'm not seeing anything that says that.
No, not saying they all believe the same thing, but let's just here's a I forget what they call a thought experiment. Let's go back to the time when Bishop Usher put out his understanding of how old the Earth was, and this is way before White. If you think about it, at that time, what would somebody back then believe? Well, they would have believed a more literal interpretation of, I think, the scriptures, even just generally. You're talking about people who's saying, okay, the universe is only 6,000 years old. So I don't think it would be out of the realm to think that the creation event would just be 7 literal days. That would make sense more in a time frame like that. That's why they still today say it's 7 days. So I think Bishop Usher and people who came after him were probably there under that understanding. When we come now to modern science that tells us something different, Alan G. White she's rejecting that. She's rejecting the understanding that yes, there's something different. It's a literal interpretation, but I think it wasn't not normal for people to think that this was the normal way of thinking about this. Because if you're talking about she was in the 1800s, these people weren't under the same understanding as we are today, and I think that's the mistake that you guys are making.
If you can get some sort of scholar or something that says similar things what these guys are saying, and they existed back in the classical, I guess, church debates times or whatever, those guys with the fancy names like John Calvin and stuff. If you can show something from back then that seems to reflect a young Earth creation type view, then go ahead. But
it really wouldn't matter because we interpret, especially the Old Testament, from the perspective of the people who wrote it. And John Calvin and Bishop Usher, those people weren't there. You take it from the ancient or Eastern perspective. How would an ancient look at it? And from an ancient or Eastern view, without the science involved, the whole Genesis account is literally more or less an allegory. It's a mythos. It's literally a story of God making his what they would call his cosmic temple. That is literally what the story is about. And ancient, like I said, they wouldn't be worried about the science. But it was more to convey.
You're saying you don't think these people would have thought that this was an accurate account of how the world actually was created, like back then? Just even colloquially, you're saying that people back then, at the time the Bible was written, and reading this document, wouldn't have believed this is the way it came into account. You believe they just would have thought that was a myth. I don't know. I disagree. It just seems to be more of a stretch of imagination to understand that these people. I believe these people thought this is how it happened. This is what I believe. God created it in this particular way. 7 actual days.
The 2 problems of that is that A, we actually don't know. Because again, you'd actually have to do more research, see what they actually did believe instead of just assuming things. And B, we already kind of don't give the old people as much credit as we should sometimes. Like for instance, even the whole flat Earth thing, we figured out the Earth was round really, really, really long ago. And a lot of people kind of have this whole myth perpetrated throughout the Middle Ages that they used to think the Earth was flat in the Middle Ages. They didn't. In ancient times, yes, people did. But by the time, you're getting to the Middle Ages with the Greeks and that, we found out the Earth was round quite a while ago. So it might be the same thing when it comes to the whole young Earth creation / old Earth evolution thing too. Maybe people had that all figured out already. I mean, people can be smart. They might not know everything we know back then.
Yeah, well, as far as the cosmology in Genesis is concerned, absolutely. They did believe the Earth is flat, and they believed in the dome and everything like that. But what I'm talking about is the Adam and Eve thing, and like the God makes it in 6 or 7 days. Those days are more symbology. Even scholars will tell you that ancient people they viewed numbers. They had something called not sacred geology, sacred numerology, where they would look at different numbers and different numbers would have different meanings. A perfect example is the ancient god Anu. His number was 60 because they went by a base 60 number system, and so the ancients would associate Anu with the number 60. Now, does that mean Anu was 60 years old? No. they just equated a news value with the number 60 because it was the greatest number they had, and so it was. So in the same sense, the 7 days of creation or whatever, it was talking about something else. It wasn't it wasn't meant as a reference point to say, oh my gosh, the world was made in 7 days. It was more or less to basically point out that God, like I said, God takes this creation from a chaotic state and He brings order. And on the seventh day, He rests in His cosmic temple. That's how they would have thought about it. But notice how, like, even today, we don't ask, well, how would an ancient or Eastern person look at it? We just say, well, let's try and make this Bible fit the science, which that's not right either. So
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, like multiple could be right. I just don't know if that's actually a thing or not. So, I mean, I understand where he's coming from.
I'm appealing to just kind of a pragmatism where, if we're talking about what is more likely for, because again, you have people today who believe this thing is literal, with all the technology, with all the knowledge, with all the science that we have to show that it's not the case. So I would just assume if you run the clock back and we go back, 1,000 years or even 2,000 years, these stories become more truth than allegory. This is the way we understand the world works. I think if you ask a, Christian in the 10th century, if whether or not these stories in the Bible are literal, they would I don't think they would say no. I would think they would say yes. This is the way it is. And just another piece I just wanted to also point out is that I think today the problem is, especially Wayne, I think did hit on it when he said that sometimes the atheist or the person who doesn't believe does try to take this intellectual high ground. Like, you guys don't, most Christians don't believe in this, but that's not true. Whenever you look at the polls, more Christians actually believe evolution is true than not. I even though I know for some atheists it's going to be hard to believe, but that's actually a true statement. And right now, our opinions of Christianity shouldn't just be leveled against these young Earth creationists, because there are some people who hold reasonable views of Christianity who also believe, evolution is true. So
I think it depends where you live and stuff. Because honestly, like maybe in the European world that's how it is, but here in the Western world, it sure does not seem like it. Like even here in Canada, it seems like there's a lot of Christians in that just seem to, evolution's still this big controversial thing, right? Again, they can accept cosmology, they can accept physics, accept chemistry. But when it comes to biology, all of a sudden, a few things go against the Bible. Oh no, there's something wrong here. We can't accept that. So.
well, I think Christians, they need to stop looking at the science and trying to make the Bible fit the science, because like I said, the Bible is not a scientific account. As a matter of fact, like I said a couple of weeks ago, it's a view in Christendom now where people think you have to believe that the Bible is inerrant, like the Bible is perfect, or it doesn't have any type of textual errors or mistakes, and that's not a core Christian tenet either. So I think people hold to these tenets and they think they have to believe in this in order to be a Christian, and that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not essential, and people have to quit looking at their book like it's an instructions manual, as I've said before. I mean, if anybody can reach these kind of people, it'd be people like you, because people like me, which no longer identify as Christian, we're just seen as like evil anyhow. So.
Well, I think I'm seen as evil too. Sometimes. Imagine how people feel when I say, yeah, the Bible has some mistakes in it. And people are like, oh my gosh, you don't believe the Bible is the word of God. You don't really believe the Bible. You don't take it literally. And so I have to go into like a whole spiel of, well, what do you mean by literal? Do you mean historical? Do you mean poet? I had to go down the line. But Wayne, you've been quiet for too long. I hope you're not asleep.
you said me, MP?
No, I said Wayne. It's happened. It's finally happened. I told you, Wayne will be like, let's have a hangout. And then I'll have a hangout. And then I'll be like, Wayne, and he'll be like, I was asleep.
Nap session. Say, Wayne, what are you doing?
You're boring him to death. Wayne is
I have no idea. Yes, Wayne
Maybe
is.
it's
I'm
just
about to text him. I'm gonna text him.
Oh.
That's another big issue too, is inerrancy. Because I think if Christians inerrancy, inspiration, and textual interpretation, those are like the three biggest problems with Christianity. Because if you notice, flat earthers, younger creationists, and who are the other intelligent designers? Boom. Those are like the three views in Christianity where they all kind of view inspiration the same, and they all kind of have the same interpretations of the Bible. As a matter of fact, ask a flat earther, a younger earther, and an intelligent designer, how would they interpret the book of Revelations? And every last thing in Revelations is one, about things that's going to happen today in our day and age, and two, they interpret that the same way they interpret Genesis. They interpret it as, like you said, that it's more or less like an instruction manual or future historical account of events that will play step by step. Hold on, I'm texting Wayne, trying to see if he's up. But the way I see it, I think, and one of the biggest problems too is you go to church. I don't even do any of you guys still like attend a church or anything like that, or go because your wife goes or something like that. I know that's the thing now. People go to church because their wife goes to church. Anybody? No. Well, the churches I've been to lately, the pastors don't do a good job at teaching. They don't do a good job at conveying certain theological doctrines to their sheep, to their flock. It's a whole lot of singing, it's a whole lot of dancing, and if there is a sermon or whatever, the pastor doesn't touch on these topics. And so Christians don't necessarily get taught anything. They have a whole bunch of assumptions, and one of the assumptions is, they have assumptions about inspiration and stuff like that. But the way I view it is, from their point of view, from the young earthers and stuff like that, and the intelligent designers, they look at the inspiration of the Bible as God told people what to write down step by step. Like maybe some guy woke up and on his way to the kitchen, God just bam puts this guy into a trance. He starts writing down on a scroll or something, and he wakes up and he's like, "Holy crap! Like, look at what I wrote." So I think that's how they think this all went down. That's why if you ask a lot of people, like the concordism approach, well, how did they know all of this? They'll say, well, God told them what to write. It's not God inspires them what to write. It's God told them what to write. And that's not really, I don't think that's how Christians should see inspiration. That's more like a Muslim view of interpretation, where God tells you what to write down step by step. But I think a better way Christians can look at inspiration is God uses these people in their time, these ancient people. They don't know anything about science. They don't know anything about, the stuff us moderns know. God, he works with what he has. These people have limited knowledge, and they only know what they know for people around their time. And, God uses them to write that. And it's still inspiration because God is the one who he guides them, or he prompts them to write down what they write down. It's not some spooky thing where God is telling these ancient people about 21st century discoveries. Because I think that's how a lot of Christians, I think that's one of the main problems, is they think that is how it went down. They think God told them exactly what to write, how to write it, and did I crash?
I still hear you.
So yeah, and then on top of that, the textual, like the historical interpretation too. I think that's going out the window as well because you hear a lot of Christians trying to interpret the Bible from the viewpoint of like you guys said John Calvin, Bishop Usher, Ellen White, and we're trying to interpret these ancient accounts from the other accounts of people who are not ancient. Like John Calvin is not an ancient Near Eastern. Ellen G. White was not an ancient Near Eastern. We need to go back to ancient Near Eastern and start about the Bible.
Yeah, I guess, but it doesn't mean a scholar can't be somewhat right about some things, though.
Well, yeah, and that's why you go to scholar like John Walton. John Walton is an ancient Near Eastern scholar. Michael Heiser. I just talked to Michael Heiser 3 months ago. We have scholars in the field who deal with stuff like that. But I think the problem is for a lot of Christians, I don't think that it's even too hard. I think they just don't know. Like nobody has ever told a lot of Christians about this stuff. They don't talk about this stuff in church. I don't know if you guys have been to a church recently, but most churches is pretty much the same routine. They sing a bunch of songs, and then the pastor stands up and he gives a message. But when most pastors give messages today, they don't. It's not like a Bible college course. It's more or less a message about what they feel God has told them to say to their flock. So I've literally heard some people say this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I know that. What's his face? Matt Slick actually had a problem himself where he thought there was too many Christians that didn't know enough about their Bible, and he thought like if he were a pastor for like one of these churches or whatnot, you'd say, okay, everybody, like make sure you actually bring your Bible. I'm gonna make you like really familiar with your book. I remember him saying that one time on a show. So he feels that church sermons should be more like Bible courses as well.
I know. Plenty of people who go to church every week, whatever. The thing they should know, they just do not know. So then that leads me to believe: do you really believe this? Which they could, but they also could have really bad reasons for believing it. So I think Wayne went to sleep.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think MP's computer crashed.
I'd say you made some interesting points, though. The only thing I'd say is that you're not really covering any new ground, though. I mean, this kind of stuff we already really did before. The only thing that we're really doing, I feel, is by doing these kind of things, is kind of just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's the only way you'd be able to reach these people is to actually reach them and then find somebody that might be interested in what you're saying, right?
I guess I gotta go to some.
Since this debate is a little more important than these, because right now we're kind of just in our own little echo chamber in a sense.
Right. Well, it's just me and you again. Hold on, give me 1 minute. I'm about to call Wayne to see if he's sleeping. Hold on. Yeah, I guess he is knocked out. I did invite Tony. Well, Midnight asked if he could invite Tony, and so I said yeah. And Tony said in the side chat, he says, "Wait, I think my girl wants to have sex. I'll be right back." So I don't know what's up with that, but I think Christians, yeah, they need to do more research. They need to look. I mean, like, I don't know any other Christians besides the Christians on Google Plus and Wayne and about 2 other Christians who I do know. So Three Christians who I do know outside of G plus. They're the only people who identify as Christians, and they actually do look this stuff up. They actually do time researching and digging and trying to find answers and educate themselves on their beliefs. But most Christians are Christians purely because of culture.
Well, it's maybe because people don't feel they have to, right? Because I think I've told you before how I've had that type of conversation with my mom, and she just doesn't care enough about biology not to look into how true
Well,
evolution
not
is or
even
not.
biology, but like Christian like theology, which I would think is important. If you think this theology is true, you should do your best to become more educated on it.
Yeah, but I guess people just have their biases, right? Where they think, oh, this is what God's saying, this is what I feel he's saying, so I'm not even going to bother looking what
Hmm.
other people say.
Right, and a lot of pastors run their sermons the same way. I've heard a pastor say the Bible the same way he would roll a magic 8 ball, and whatever he opened his Bible up to, that's what he felt God wanted him to speak. I think that is stupid, but okay. Because the Bible has text, and that's what people don't understand. The Bible was written to a specific culture for that specific culture. Or I like the way John Walton puts it. He says the Bible is for you, but the Bible was not written to you. The Bible is written to a specific people, and it needs to be interpreted in that cultural light. Which honestly, if you don't go to school for that, or if you aren't in touch with certain scholars and studies, you're not going to get the best interpretation of the Bible, but I wouldn't necessarily say you're not going to get the correct interpretation. Because I don't think in the end God is going to look at like somebody like Hugh Ross, for example. Hugh Ross has a concordism approach with the Bible, and he tries to read the science into the Bible. Somebody like I don't know, a charlatan. I don't think God is going to put Hugh Ross in the same boat as somebody who is going out and scamming people with those Bible verses compared to Hugh Ross, who's actually leading people to Christ with his concordism approach. So God can save souls even in that, but wouldn't it be so much more beneficial for people to actually read the Bible in its right context? I think that's a beautiful thing because that's what we're supposed to do. It works in history.
Yeah, I guess.
So,
I know it's weird.
I don't know. That's my view.
Yeah.
I'm actually about to go to sleep, guys. It's 1 in the morning here. It's 1 in the morning for you too, right, Thaddeus? You're on the East Coast, right?
No,
Hmm?
I'm on Pacific time.
Oh wow, what time is it your time?
It's only 10.
Oh yeah, I'm going to bed. I'll talk to you guys later.